Okay, let's begin. Today we continue our study of the Siddur, and we are on page 76. Last week we talked about the concept of Baruch, which is to bring, the idea of Baruch is to bring God's presence into our reality. That's the idea of a blessing, right? So I want to continue. So this passage from the bottom of page 74 through page 76 and on until the top of page 78 are from Divrei Hayomim and Nehemiah, respectively. The first passage from Divrei Hayomim are the words of David HaMelech. And the second paragraph in the middle of page 76 are the words of Nehemiah. They have in common, these two passages, that they both reflect the intent to build a temple for God on earth. David HaMelech, at the end of his life, gathers the leaders of the people along with Am Yisrael, and he expresses his deepest desire to build a Beis HaMikdash, to build a temple, which of course he never fulfilled, but he certainly laid the groundwork for that to happen. And as we said, that's the ultimate bracha, that idea of bringing God's presence into the human reality. Nehemiah too was involved in building the second Beis HaMikdash, the second temple. And this too is at the occasion of, is oriented towards that idea of building the second Beis HaMikdash. This was at the moment of the dedication of the second Beis HaMikdash. And so these expressions don't, at least the passages that we're referring to here, don't explicitly speak about the Beis HaMikdash, but they capture the essence of what it means to build a Beis HaMikdash, which is, what is the bracha that is being brought about by the building of this temple? And that is that this sanctuary will be a place dedicated to devotion toward the Most High. And now we focus on, what does that mean, Most High? We could start right with the top of page 76. So we'll take two or three phrases from these prayers and understand this Most High that we're speaking of. L'cho Hashem hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferes v'hanetzach v'hahod. L'cho Hashem hamamlacha. During these days of Sfiras HaOmer, most of these words will be familiar. Gedula, gevura, tiferes, netzach, hod, mamlacha. Translated: yours, O Eternal One, is the greatness, the strength, the splendor, the triumph, and the glory. Yours, O Eternal One, is the kingdom. So why do I say that this would be familiar to us during the Omer? Because during the counting of the Omer, we make reference to the 7 Sefirot, the 7 divine attributes that are mirrored in the human consciousness as well, and that we are hoping to rectify during our spiritual work during this time as we prepare for the as we prepare for the giving of the Torah, to receive the Torah. And so this, the Gedula here, refers to the Chesed, to God's kindness. Gevura, right? This is the second of the Midos. Strength or stricture. Tiferes, splendor, which is the harmony between Chesed and Gevura. Netzach is the triumph, the ability to persevere. Hod here is translated as glory. Kabbalistic translation of that is humility. And then we go to the Malchus, which is the seventh of the Spheros. So here we're referring to the divine Spheros, the divine attributes, the Spheros Elyonos, the divine qualities that make up the inner, that comprise the creative direction of the world. How Hashem creates the world, the Kabbalah speaks of through the Sephirot, through these divine emanations, through these divine lights. And now the interesting, so there's a lot of Kabbalistic literature on these Sephiros, the Gedula, the Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Malchus. There's a lot of literature around this, speaking about the immense transcendence and how everything in the universe is comprised of a combination of these Sephirot. These are the energies, the lights that God emanates in order to create the world. They are the underlying characteristics. The secrets behind everything is some combination of these divine Sephiros. And David HaMelech, in this case, directs our attention to the idea that L'cha Hashem HaGedula. These are yours, they are not you. And this is very powerful. It's such a simple phrase that they are yours, but they are, what's implied by that is maybe beyond our ability to comprehend. It says that everything in the universe, even the highest and most holy, even the greatest thing that we can possibly experience, is something which belongs to Hashem, but there is a divine truth that's deeper than any specific characteristic. And that, David HaMelech says, as we build the temple, we have the ability to connect to a divine truth that is deeper than any specific characteristic. That is, and that encompasses all of them, that is present in all of them. And so here he alludes to this two-pronged system that's spoken of in Kabbalistic teaching, which is that there are two fundamental lights of Hashem, so to speak. There are two ways in which Hashem brings life to the world. So the Kabbalistic writings refer to a light that fills all the worlds and the light that encompasses all the worlds. The light that fills all the worlds is that each individual creature, each individual created being, from the largest to the smallest, has its own specific life, has its own specific divine energy that is imbued in it by the Creator. And this is the neshama, the life force, the nefesh rather, the life force that is in each thing. And then there is the or hasovev, the light that encompasses all. And this is the context. This or hasovev, this all-encompassing light, is the context that, or the fundamental reality that all of us, that all of existence lives within. We might say that it is being itself. That is, so, and that or hasovev, this all-encompassing light, is beyond any individual characteristics. It is, in a sense, oriented towards the worlds, but it is otherworldly. It's not worldly. And so the magic, the miracle of the building of the Beis HaMikdash is this, that we have the ability to experience. Of course, we have the ability to experience our inner life and to experience that as divine, but also to connect to the ultimate reality of the universe, to which Gedula, Gevura, etc. belongs. L'cho Hashem HaGedula.
The rabbis of the Talmud connect to the light that encompasses all, and is that why they were so clannish with their fellow rabbis rather than their wives? Because they could discuss certain things only with these fellow rabbis, but they couldn't discuss with their wives. They felt that their wives couldn't understand.
I wouldn't agree with the premise of your question. I wouldn't agree with the premise of the question. Yeah, the premise of the question that the rabbis were somehow disconnected from.
Did they connect to the ultimate reality of the universe?
The ultimate reality of the universe includes every person. Everyone is within that ultimate reality. No one is outside of it. Whether we're conscious of it or not is another story.
That's what I meant.
But if I connect to the ultimate reality of the universe, then I must be able to connect to any person as a divine being. And this is why we continue by saying, "V'ha'osher v'ha'kavod milfanecha," wealth and glory are before you. And it's customary during this part of the davening to give tzedakah, which again connects to this idea of the temple. That the temple, the idea that we're going to make a home for God in the physical space, is manifested in this moment of giving tzedakah, where we take our physical existence, the things that we have, and we orient them towards divine service. And now, our God, we submit ourselves before you. We humble ourselves before you, and we glorify your splendorous name. So that idea is that out of our physical experience, out of the ordinary, within the ordinary, we discover this beyond, this ultimate reality. And we see that in everything. Let's continue into the next section, this one by Nehemiah. Yeah.
When the Beulah comes, will that ultimate reality be evident to us consciously?
Yes. When the Geula comes, it'll be relevant, it'll be evident to everyone, not only to Jews, also to Gentiles. As we say in the end of Az Yashir, by Yom Hahu Yihiyeh Hashem Echad U'Shemo Echad. On that day, God will be one and his name will be one. Meaning that we will identify in our naming of God that oneness, that ultimate reality. And we say, and before that it says, V'alu Moshiim Bahar Tzion Lishpotis Har Esav. And the saviors will ascend Mount Zion to judge Esav's mountain, which suggests that this truth would be evident also to Esav, to the nations of the world. Back to Nehemiah. Atahu Yudke Vavke Levadecha. You are He, the eternal source of everything, alone. This phrase is similar to the one at the beginning of davening, where we say, you were alone before the world was created, and you are alone after the world is created. And so this is also another variation of this theme of L'cha Hashem HaGedula, that yours, God, is the greatness. That is, you are not defined. God is not defined by the world. The world is an expression of God, is something that God chooses to emanate, but it doesn't define. It doesn't define him. And this also indicates, Atahu Hashem levadecha, you are alone. Ata asisa es hashamayim, you have made the heavens. A mystical interpretation of this phrase, you have made the heavens. What is heaven? What is heaven? No? How would you define the word heaven? Is there a place called heaven that we go to? So then it's not a place. It's not a physical place. It's not a place. You're speaking in terms of place.
What is place? Doesn't take up space, matter?
Place is the dimension in which no two things can exist at once.
But it can.
Oh, so then it's not a place. And heaven is right here. Right? So the heaven is an orientation, perhaps. I would say that heaven is that which we cannot see. When we can't see something, we refer to it as heaven.
You can't see air.
Well, you can experience it tangibly. You can experience, the question was, you can't see air and it's not heaven. You can experience air tangibly. It's space. The gases that are present in the air, you know, when you put a physical object into the air, it moves the air out of the way. And there's air pressure, there's friction from the air, all these kinds of things. So air occupies space, and it's visible in a sense, maybe not to the naked eye, but it's visible. It's empirical. The soul occupies space. So does the soul occupy space? So in one sense, yes, and in another sense, no.
Because when Hashem breathed into Adam, so a breath is air. Right.
Well, obviously that is the term God breathed into Adam, a living soul, is a metaphor that has characteristics that are instructive to us. So let's understand what the meaning of, so to the point of your question, does the soul occupy space? So in a certain sense, yes. When we talk about the light that fills all worlds. So if I have a soul, if I have an identity that is mine alone, divinely ordained, divinely vivified, given life by God, then there is a specific quality, specific manifestation of God's creation that is present only in this place. At the same time, in the divine nature of that soul, I am oriented towards the source. And in that sense, I am connected to the beyond place. So, and this then is the meaning of Vayipach Bi'ap of Nishmas Chaim, that God breathed into Adam a living soul. The idea of the breath is that while on the one hand, it's present here, and it has an individualistic quality to it, on the other hand, it is being generated by its source in this moment. And as I feel the breath against my hand, while what I feel on my hand is the breath, what I'm experiencing is the energy of the source. And the moment that the source stops breathing, my experience of that breath will stop. The presence of that breath will stop, will no longer be there. And so in that sense, my individual experience is a window to become aware of that which is beyond my individual experience. It's a window to the divine truth, the ultimate reality of the universe. It's a window into the beyond me, the beyond space. So the neshama, on the one hand, is present in space, but on the other hand, it is inherently, essentially connected to that which is beyond space.
You believe that we understand this when we're dead?
I don't know what we can understand when we're, the question is, do I believe that we'll understand this when we're dead? I don't know what we can understand when we're dead. Well, we we don't die in the different form that we occupy once we're no longer alive physically. Right? There's a difference. There's a different it's a different state of being. Yeah. Once the body is underground, the spirit is now in a different state of being. Right? It's different type of presence that the individual human being occupies.
But the level of understanding of the soul should be the same.
I don't know. I don't have any comment on what we understand after we die this
No,
time.
I just wonder what you believe.
We'll talk about belief in a moment. Perhaps we'll get to belief today. If not, it's in the next passage. You know how to do that? You press down on the button there, yeah.
Yeah, I saw.
Okay.
Adendo.
So maybe I understand in your question that it's hard to understand now when we're alive.
Власне, прямо сейчас сама. Я вот дня не видел. You're such a good guy.
I just wanted to know what you believe.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. Because it's tied to individual consciousness. So I don't know what certainly we understand everything. The question is, in this world, in our life, we understand everything, we experience everything through the lens of our individual consciousness, of our self. And the question is, what is it like to understand something without the lens of the self? It's something incomprehensible to us. And how much self is present? How much of the self is there after we pass away? I don't know. But certainly Jewish teaching suggests that after we pass away, we know all the secrets of the universe. That is what Gan Eden is. Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, Olam Haba, is experiencing the divine truth.
Did the Kabbalists understand these secrets?
Whatever is possible for a human being to understand, that human being understands. There are human beings who understand whatever is possible for a human being to understand. And some of those are Kabbalists. Let's continue for a moment, okay? Atahu Hashem levadecha. So we say, you God are alone. We're on page 76 in the Artscroll Siddur. So, Ata asisa es hashamayim. So we talked about heaven, right? Shamayim, the heavens. Shamei hashamayim, that which is above the heavens. B'chol tzavam and all their hosts. So what's fascinating to me is this use of terminology when we talk about the shamayim, the invisible, the beyond human comprehension, that which is the highest of the high, that which is the most spiritual of all, right? We talk about, why do we say that heaven, we associate heaven with spirituality? Is because the spirits, we're talking about that which is outside of the human experience, right? We talk about, Robin, we talk about something invisible, right? So I'm not talking only about that which can be seen with the eye, we're also talking about that which can be experienced in the human realm, that which is empirically available to us, that which we can experience. That's a kind of visibility. And so the spirit is, in a sense, invisible to us, which is why it's associated with heaven. It's invisible, it's beyond our human comprehension. And here we refer to that as asisa, you have made it. A Kabbalistic framing of this idea is that Shamayim and Shemei HaShamayim refer to Atzilus, to the highest world, that which is closest to the divine truth, the state of being that is completely bound up with the divine truth. The very, very beginning of any existence at all. And this, the highest world of Atzilus, of the infinity, is still Ata Asisa, you have made it. And making it, the word Asiya refers to a kind of technical, right? Asiya is the lowest of worlds. It's the practical world. It's the tangible world. And so what we're suggesting here is that no matter how spiritual we can imagine, no matter how deep we can think, no matter what our human mind can reach for, compared to the essential truth of Hashem, that concepts that we can imagine are, in compared to the truth, are like practical facts. They're concrete things, lacking in any kind of, what's a fact? What is a concrete thing? A concrete thing is, it is what it is. It doesn't necessarily express any connection to its source, right? It seems to have an independent and simple existence that that doesn't express any truth. An event, when we simply right, when we talk about, let's say, a thing, right, an artifact, you can either look at the artifact from the point of view of its shape, or you can look at the artifact from the point of view of the meaning behind it. So the meaning can't, in truth, the meaning can't be separate from the artifact. And yet, when you look at the artifact, you don't necessarily see its meaning. So the world of Asiya, the practical world, can often appear lifeless, can appear meaningless. Of course, it's filled with meaning, but the meaning is not evident in the practical domain. An example of this is people do mitzvahs and they feel meaningless. They're simply acts without any kind of connection, without any inherent connection with truth. Whereas when we speak on emotional terms, which is the world of Yetzirah, or conceptual terms, the world of Beriah, there you can't separate meaning from that headspace, from that dimension. Whereas in the world of Asiya, in the world of the practical, the thing, the dimension, is not apparently connected to the truth, to the meaning. And so what we're saying here is that for the true truth, for Yud Kei Vav, for Havaya, for the ultimate truth for the ultimate truth, the essential essence of Hashem, even the highest meaning and the highest and deepest truths that humans can imagine are still like artifacts. They're as though they are the realm of Asiya. Ata asisa es hashamayim. On the other hand, Ata asisa es hashamayim, you, only you, could bring about such a type of existence. The fact that things can exist and appear to have an independent self is a miracle that could only be made possible by the deepest power of the Creator. And in their being, in their presence, they somehow express, they somehow reflect eternity. Because when we experience a thing, or we experience being, a thing being or our self being, right, which is an Asiya dimension. We're not speaking of ourselves conceptually, we're speaking of ourselves as existing. Existence appears to be taken for granted. When we say taken for granted, I want to say it appears to be an essential truth, an unquestionable fact, and eternal. Existence has always existed. How can there be anything other than being? And that is the dimension in which created beings, Asiya, exists. Right? Concepts, on the other hand, have a quality to them that we see them as possibly as having a beginning, let's say, or as having a defined quality to them. But things, the context of existence, the way physical things exist, this has a kind of eternal, essential quality to it. And that, again, is the window into the Ata, into the essence. And specifically, when we talk about this word Ata, referring to God as you, we are beyond any name. We're speaking of that which cannot be described in any way other than you. Yes. Well, when I speak about physical created beings, I'm talking about physical properties. Yeah. Now, the word Ata, so powerful. So I want to talk about the word Ata in two forms. One is the simple form, which is the deeper one. And then we'll go to the Kabbalistic form, which is already maybe, ironically, counterintuitively, maybe a little bit, it's more spiritual, but it's not as deep. You, referring to Hashem as you, refers to the essence, the essential truth of the divine reality. Of the divine reality of Hashem himself. We're not talking about any midos, we're not talking about any qualities, we're not talking about any sephiros, we're not talking about any dimensions, any aspects. We're talking about the essence of everything. The inner, the deepest and most ultimate possible truth is Ata, is you. Ata, only you, only the essence of Hashem could possibly bring about ha'aretz v'chol asher aleha, the created beings, the physical created beings, the rules of science. And again, as we said before, Ata asisa es hashamayim shemei hashamayim. For you, the heavens and the beyond the heavens, that which is higher than the heavens, are all like created things compared to you. Yes, yes.
So would you say that our use of the word science and the physical use of the word science for a concept which only exists when the name of God?
No, I would not say that. I would just say that we would have a more unified concept of all of that. I have a feeling he doesn't know where he's going. Yes, we'll consider science. We'll see the unity that's in everything.
So we won't necessarily need these categories. We might express them as God's will and not consider it science, but God.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Now we'll go to Ve'ata Mechaya es kulam. You give life to all of them. And here the word Ve'ata appears again. Ve'ata, the sages tell us, is a word that is made up of a secret. Ve'ata is Aleph, Taf, Hey. Aleph, from Aleph to Taf, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and Hey are the five tools of articulation that the Hey Motzaot HaPeh, the five tools of articulation which make up the ability to speak. So we talk about the lips, the tongue, the palate, the teeth, and the throat. Is that five? I'm gonna do teeth, lips, teeth. Well, lips, teeth, palate, tongue, throat. And the letters of the Hebrew alphabet can be divided into those that are primarily expressed by one or another of the Motzaot. So the Taf uses the teeth, or the Sin and Shin use the teeth, the Lamed uses the tongue, the Nun uses the palate, the Chet and the Hey use the throat. Nun uses the tongue, yeah. So that's that. So Aleph, Taf, Hey. So we're talking about this idea that all of this, as kulam, all of existence is an expression of letters. Now, if you remember, we talked about what letters are. Letters are, and this is distinct from linguistics and hearing and speaking. We're talking about how language works, which is that we have symbols that have nothing to do with what they're expressing or what they're describing. A bet, yud, taf, that make up the word bayit, has nothing to do with a house. They're theoretically, you could say they're arbitrary symbols. They're symbols that have nothing to do with, you only know what it means if you know what it means. Well, if I point that out to you, maybe, but that's not how language works. Fundamentally, that's not how language works, right? It's a symbol. It's a symbol that we use to describe things. And yet, once you understand the language, once you understand the letters, you have this very deep appreciation and understanding of a deep truth. And so kulam, all of existence, is both a concealment of Hashem's presence in the way that language works. It's a concealment of Hashem's presence, and also it's a window into the existence of Hashem. And this is what we talked about, that the existence of things are, they contain a quality to them which helps us to be aware of the essential, of this notion of essential truth, which on its deepest level is divine. So the Atah Mechaya Es Kulam, the Aleph Taf Hey, gives life to all of them. And here we're talking again about the Or Hamamale, the light that is present in each individual thing. That each individual thing has its own sense of self, its own divine its own divinely willed existence, and it is the result of the presence of Hashem concealed in the letters of the Aleph base and expressed through the Hey, through the 5 qualities of divine emanation, so to speak. And here again, we go back to this, as you brought up before, the breathing, which is this idea that it's being emanated from Hashem constantly. The Atah Mechaya Es Kulam here is spoken in the present tense. You are giving life to all of them, which says that in this moment, everything that exists is currently being willed into existence by the ultimate, by Hashem himself. Utzevo hashamayim l'chom ishtachavim, and the hosts of the heaven, which here can refer both to the sun and the moon, etc., as well as to the angelic dimension, the malachim, which is l'chom ishtachavim, they bow to you. What does that mean, that they bow to you? We're not saying that the sun bows to God, but that that all of the heavenly bodies are in complete nullification before you. When a person bows down, they're saying that I submit myself to you completely. I'm completely batal, I'm completely nullified. I have no individuality, I have no independence from you. I'm completely servant, your servant. And that is the heavens. When we look up to the heavens, we can see this constant, continuous presence of divine creation that's happening. And all of that is, l'chom ishtachavim, is purely divine will. The behavior of the sun and the moon and the heaven and the hosts, as well as the angelic forms, are all perfectly aligned with divine will. And then we finally go on to say, Atahu Hashem Elokim, you are the eternal source of everything that is, was, and will always be, and that gives, and that is the source of life. Elokim, that is the origin of the specific individual creatures, Asher Bacharta be'Avram, that chose our ancestor Avram. Took him out of Ur Kasdim and made his name Avraham, which is to say that the journey of the Jewish people is also a product of this same amazing dynamic. The Atah Mechaya Es Kulam, the Atahu Hashem Levadecha. And the L'cha Hashem Hagedula V'Hagevura. So thank you for joining us.